In this lecture, we will talk about the pathophysiology of pitting edema and non-pitting edema. This lecture is purely from physiology point of view, and it is in continuation with our previous lecture, which is about the safety factors that normally prevent edema. In this lecture, we discussed that there are basically three main safety factors which basically try to prevent edema. And the first factor is basically low compliance of interstitium in negative interstitial fluid pressure range. And we discussed in detail that when the interstitial fluid pressure is in the negative region, it increases very rapidly whenever there is increase in the interstitial fluid volume. So even with slight increase in the interstitial fluid volume, there is a rapid increase in the interstitial fluid pressure. Once the interstitial fluid pressure is in positive, it crosses the zero, then at this point, even with high increase in interstitial fluid volume, there is very minimal change in interstitial fluid pressure, and this interstitial fluid pressure, which normally prevents edema from occurrence, or basically you can see that this interstitial fluid pressure is trying to push the fluid into the capillary and is basically trying to stop the movement of fluid from inside the capillary into the interstitium. Now, we discussed that basically the interstitium normally is in the gel form, and the interstitial gel means that the fluid in the interstitium is in small pockets of proteoglycans, and it is not allowed to move freely. When the interstitial fluid pressure reaches the positive or zero level, after that there is a rapid accumulation of fluid in the interstitium, and the interstitial fluid volume increases with much less increase in the interstitial fluid pressure, and hence the compliance of the interstitium increases. Now initially, the interstitial gel prevents the accumulation of fluid in the interstitium. The interstitial gel simply means that a small amount of fluids in the interstitium are basically packed in these filaments, which are basically proteoglycan filaments. And once the interstitial fluid pressure has increased into the positive, then there is rapid accumulation of free fluid, the fluid which can move freely in the interstitium. When this stage has occurred, then we can say that edema has occurred. And this type of edema, which is due to the accumulation of fluid in the interstitium, is called pitting edema. Now here you see this is a normal tissue with cells and interstitium, and the interstitium is basically made of proteoglycan filaments, and these proteoglycan filaments normally will not allow free movement of fluid. But when the interstitial gel is lost and the interstitial fluid increases from negative zone to positive zone, and there is a lot of accumulation of free fluid in the interstitium, then it seems like this. There is a lot of free fluid in the interstitium, and this is basically the pitting edema. Now, in pitting edema, for example, if pitting edema has occurred here, if we press this point for some time and then release, there will be a pit formation here. So you can see that when this point is pressed, this tissue is pressed here, there will be formation of a pit here. And it is because the fluid collected here due to edema displaces here and there, everywhere, and that's because the fluid here in the interstitium is free to move. And such edema which occurs due to collection of fluid which is free to move in the interstitium is called pitting edema. And so in this type of edema, when the tissue will be pressed, there will be formation of a pit, but with release of pressure, the pit will be a pit will be lost, or the tissue will regain its normal shape, because the fluid which has been pressed and had moved to different parts, it will recollect and will come again to that specific point due to the free movement of fluid in pitting edema. In contrast, the non-pitting edema, it is not due to collection of free fluid in the interstitium, rather it is either due to the increase in size of the cells. So if you see here in pitting edema, the size of the cells are the same as here in the normal tissue, but the free collected fluid has increased here in pitting edema. You can see the free fluid has increased here as compared to the normal tissue. But in non-pitting edema, there is no free fluid collection in the interstitium, rather the cell size has increased. Or the second cause for non-pitting edema is that there is collection of free fluid in the interstitium, the fluid which is initially free to move in the interstitium, just like the pitting edema, but there is basically coagulation or clotting with the help of fibroblast. So this black color fibroblast has been shown. Now this type of edema also is non-pitting edema. So in non-pitting edema, suppose for example, if this tissue is having a non-pitting edema, even if we press this part, there will be no pit formation. Or there will be no depression. So pitting edema is due to collection of free fluid in the interstitium. Non-pitting edema is not due to necessarily due to the collection of fluid in the interstitium. It can be either due to increase in the size of the cells, or even it can be due to collection of free fluid in the interstitium but with clotting of the fibroblast, due to which there will be no free fluid movement. Even if this is pressed, if this tissue is pressed, the fluid cannot move here and there, because the whole of the region has been clotted with the help of these fibroblasts. Now, pitting edema mostly occur in cardiac failure or liver failure or renal failure. So in all these conditions, congestion occurs in the body, and there is collection of a lot of fluids or water in the body, due to which edematous conditions occur, and such edema most of the time is pitting edema. So congestive heart failure, chronic renal failure, and chronic liver disease, these conditions will basically lead to pitting edema. And non-pitting edema mostly will occur in lymph flow blockage, or hypothyroidism or hyperthyroidism. So these are the differences between pitting edema and non-pitting edema. Thanks a lot for watching the video.